Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first HUG webinar of 2020. Our topic today is rewrites and renewals, workflows and tips to make agency intelligence work for you. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We had over 500 people register for this webinar, so during the webinar, participants will be muted. You can use the chat feature to communicate your questions or comments, and at the end of the webinar, we'll endeavor to answer all your questions when we open it up for Q&A. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, maybe you can't hear or see something, or if you have to leave to assist a customer, feel free to do so. We will be sharing this video, a recorded webinar, with all of you at a later date. And for all of you that registered, we'll email you a link directly, but we will also post it on our website, which is hawksoftusergroup.org. And in order to access the recorded webinar, you will have to create a username and password because this will be located under our member-only content. A couple of other things that you might notice, this webinar is going to include both some PowerPoint and we're going to actually get into the CMS and do a process. If you're having any issues reading the information within CMS, make sure that you have everything in full screen mode. And our host today, our presenter, is George Patterson. He is a HawkSoft user. He started his career with Williamson Insurance in 1995 and has done everything from customer service to sales. And he's currently the agency development and system administrator. They became HawkSoft users in 2008, and he has served on several focus groups as beta testers, speaker at the National HUG Conference, and planning committee for the regional HawkSoft user group chapter, HUG of the Heartland. And George and his wife, Kelly, are active in the art scene in their hometown, and they love to travel. And George, thank you so much for being our host today and teaching us how you use HawkSoft. That's one of our goals of HUG, is to help you guys all understand how to use HawkSoft from the user perspective. And George, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Good morning or good afternoon to everybody joining us, whatever the case may be for you. And I would like to preface today's session with saying how privileged I am that the leadership of HUG actually takes the initiative to do this for their users and to communicate these best practices to everyone, but also that they asked me to do one of these inaugural webinars for everybody. I think the sharing of these ideas makes everybody better, makes everybody able to do their job better, and I think it is just a great organization that they have. And the sharing of ideas is really what's going to make this system work for us the best. So support them, whenever you can. Talk a little bit about what we're going to do in today's session. As we go through, we're going to hit on the rewrites and renewals, and we're going to talk about how this impacts some of your policy reporting or even your workflows on that. And as we talk about this, we're going to go in and we're going to explain why the policy statuses are so important to the process of your workflows in order to make your data that you might look at accurate. So a lot of people want to know, the data, the production statistics. If this is stuff that is important to you and you rely on that, these policy statuses are very important in making sure that that data is reflecting the numbers that you need to manage your agency. As we do that, we're going to take this a step further even, and we're going to demonstrate for you how to actually do some of these processes. The one thing that we have in HawkSoft is there's just a ton of freedom to do things, and there's ways that you can go through a workflow, that you can work your way through something and say, well, it works this way, and this is how this is how I've always done it, and maybe your cubicle neighbor or the person in the office across the hall is not doing it the same way. And we have all that freedom to be able to do these different things, which is an advantage to some point. But the other thing that we need to know is that if we're going to rely on these workflows and these reports, that it is important to record the data using HawkSoft's best practices because they're building this information based on that best practices that they have in place. So we're going to do some demonstrations for you on there to show you how those actually pan out and how those should look. At the end, we'll probably, as we go along, we're going to discuss a plan to how you can implement these tools in your agency and start getting the results that you need. And a lot of that is just basically going to come down to initiative and what you're willing to do. And then, as Jennifer mentioned, I'd like to take the latter part of the session, if we could, to address those questions that you guys may have, or anything that maybe we were doing during the demonstrations. You're like, hey, can you show me that again? And I know that when we're on these web meetings that we have varying levels of expertise, or some people maybe do a job that others don't, or something like that. So if it's one of those things, as I'm going down through this, I'm going to take it at a pace that you might be like, yes, I know that, or it's too slow or something, but I'm going to try to take it at a pace that's about medium to let everybody catch that. But if it's one of those things where we flew by something and you weren't able to see exactly what was going on there, we'd like to take that latter part of the meeting to talk about those particular things on that. I always like to start off with a little bit of information about what the topic is about and give you a little history about where this is coming from, and talk specifically about the reporting feature in HawkSoft called Agency Intelligence. They rolled that out in 2017 in version 3.16, and the entire genesis of this particular report was to give those agency owners and those managers the ability to track those key performance indicators that are important to running an agency. With the input from agent focus groups, they continue to make improvements, continuous improvements to this report to try to make it the best that it can be. I know from the time that it launched, we've been able to see it evolve ourselves, and from talking to some of the developers at HawkSoft, I know that there is more to come on that. So if you're not using Agency Intelligence as a tool right now, get acclimated to it, because there are some very good things coming. The one thing I hear whenever I talk about Agency Intelligence, though, is the biggest challenge that we have with that right now, and having the reports reflect accurate, is the data that is input by users during the workflow process. And the bulk of that is going to come down to when you're rewriting an existing policy that you have in the agency. If you need to remarket that with another carrier, you need to place it elsewhere. That is reported different ways, or in renewals. And I'll do a deeper dive into those renewals as we talk about those a little bit. But those are some of the key areas where this data tends to go a little off track on the reports. So Agency Intelligence reports on policy KPI information. Most notably, it's going to be the policies added and the policies lost of the preceding 12 months. So what that makes for those workflows that I was mentioning in those previous slides is it makes it critical that if you're going to rely on that report, that you're going to want those reflected correctly on the actual CMS client screen. And I have some demonstrations that I'm going to show you, but I'm also going to show you where on the report that those become so important on that. On those rewrites and those remarkets, policy information from renewal has some impact on policies lost if you're not recording it properly. So if your agency right now is solely relying on download for policy information, and let's say that you're not really doing anything with those things that come in from brokers, or it might be commercial policy that doesn't download, and the company either sends it to you by email or they mail it to you. And if you're just saying, well, just worry about the download, and in CMS, just put the policy number in there, and if the policy cancels, just go to the company site and look at it. That will impact that Agency Intelligence. I want to show you some ways on that you can get around that and make sure that that keeps that data accurate going forward on there with it. So we'll start with rewrites and talk about those a little bit. And where the crux of the reporting comes from on the rewrites is the status field and the substatus field. So if you guys are familiar with where those are at on CMS, and I'll point those out to you on the demonstration, those are the fields where agency intelligence is pulling its information to report to you on that. So what that does for you as far as a workflow situation is that makes it critical for you guys to go in there and say, okay, now we want to make sure the status reflects correctly, and the substatus will help us also identify a little bit more of what some trends are in the agency. You know, I've talked a lot about agency intelligence, but if you just take that even one step further and you talk about those advanced reports that you can do and get into the advanced reports, you might want to know how many policies did we remarket last month due to price. You can use your advanced reports, and if you start using the status field in that way, you can go down through, you can find price, and you can identify trends and say, okay, wait a minute here. I've got ABC company, and we did 13, 14 rewrites out of that carrier, all identified as price. That's good information to know, because that's going to let you know some things where you might need to be reactive or contact your carrier rep. So those statuses are going to be really important, as well as the sub-statuses, when you're remarketing a policy. So if you follow the exact workflow that HawkSoft has designed for recording the policies that you've written within the agency, it's going to ensure that you're getting the best possible results in agency intelligence and KPI, okay? So what I would like to do is I would like to go ahead and let's dive into this and do an example of a rewrite and show you in our agency how we're doing it, and I'll tell you some things that we had to find our way along with this, but I'll show you some things that you can do to make sure that that data is reporting exactly the way that you want it to. So we've got a sample client here, okay? And for the purpose of our demonstration, we're going to say that Mr. Citizen came into the office and said, this auto premium is just much too high. I want to be able to do something else. That might just be our agency. I'm sure nobody else has ever heard anybody say anything about that. People are generally pleased with their premium, but in any case, if you do have that rare instance where somebody comes in and you guys are talking price and it's like, this is just too high. One of the things that you do, you might review the policy, see if there's anything else to be done with it, but if you don't have any other recourse, now you've looked at that option where it's like, well, we're going to remarket you with another carrier. So we're going to place you someplace else. You've gone through all the motions, you've gone through the process to do it. Now it becomes really important to record that in CMS. So what we would do is we would actually go ahead and start an action, and we're going to do it on the auto policy that he actually had in force here, okay? And we're going to start an action. We're just going to say that it was a walk-in from the insured, okay? Now, the next step that you should take on this one is change policy status. If you do that, it's going to give you policy statuses that you can choose from. Instinctively, you might want to go up here and hit this rewrite. However, if you are canceling this policy due to being placed with another carrier, select replaced, okay? And if you go into replaced, if you have sub-statuses set up on your agency management system, it'll launch you into this. Now in the sub-status, you're going to be able to identify, why are we replacing this? Claims history maybe? Price, right? We know what Mr. Citizen was saying. Maybe too many non-pays. Companies refuse to reinstate it. This could be a myriad of things. The best thing about this is you are not relegated to this list. You can go in and make your own list of whatever you want. Find those things that you want to identify in a sub-status, and then put them in this list, okay? So we know that it was price on this one, and we rewrote Mr. Citizen, and we rewrote him at renewal, okay? So we're going to say the cancellation date of this current policy that he has with us now is 2/15/2020, which is his renewal, okay? Move. Now, if you put in the cancellation date, the time there, it's going to launch you into this, and this will actually allow you to pre-fill information that will appear on an ACORD cancellation if you want to do an ACORD cancellation at this point. Maybe you've already done that in your process and you had just printed it out. You've already got it signed. You've got everything that you need. That's fine. You can actually bypass this by just not printing a cancellation form. However, if you want to do that and put the cancellation notes in there, maybe we'll say rewritten to nationwide, and you hit OK there, it's actually going to launch the A-chord for you. Better yet, it's going to pre-fill the A-chord for you. And I know you guys are watching this here. Let me see if I can blow that up just a little bit for you. So it's going to pre-fill a lot of your A-chord to where you have very little work to do on that, and you can print from there. So whatever your process is on that, if you want to adopt this, you can either already have the copy, or you could do the checkbox like I showed you here, and then we'll finish and close on that. So the next thing that's going to bring you to is that's going to bring you to somewhat of a pre-filled log note for you. So we've got the status date was replaced. Why? For price. This was the cancellation of it. And here's the form, the cancellation form comments. Now, you can go down here and you can actually add additional notes. Let's say you want to know a little bit more. I would recommend this other than just keeping that vanilla. So we're going to say that we did that. Complete your notes. If you want to follow up on that cancellation, make sure it happens all right. Keep that suspended, whatever your suspense date is going to be. And if I could just do an aside that's not directly related to this workflow, but I would recommend it. If you guys are not using categories right now, I urge you to use categories. It is an amazing tool if you are looking at a suspense list, okay? So if you have a whole suspense list there, and let's say that day you just want to go in and you want to follow up on everything that you submitted a cancellation for, you can actually sort your suspense list to say cancellations. Now you just go in and you say, okay, was this process, was this process? Same thing with new business. If you submit new business, I'll show you here in a second. You can go down here to new business, and you're just checking in your new business that day. If you're not using that category right now, I think it's probably another one of the biggest takeaways you could take from the web meeting here, and start using that, because it will just definitely define for you very easily what things do I need to take care of today. These are my phone calls. These are my emails that I need to return today. These are my new business I need to check up on. Fantastic tool. Can't recommend it enough. So yeah, for our example, let's just go ahead. We'll leave it suspended on that. So this did a couple of things here, and I want to point them out so that you guys will kind of know how to work this as you're looking at this in your own agency management system. First thing it did is notice how on the cancellation here, it only gave us the one strike instead of the two strikes we get on a canceled policy, right? What that's signifying to you is that, hey, this is a policy that is pending cancellation. So if you have to do some service, we've got 30 days, right? We've got 30 days before this new policy goes into force. So Mr. Citizen might call in, he has a changed vehicle or something like this. This is going to signify to you, your CSRs, anybody working this, when they go in and look at this, is like, oh, this is a policy that's active with a cancellation pending. So it's going to signify to them, I got to take a look at this. The other thing it does is down here in the status, notice what we've done by using that workflow is we have the status as replaced pending, because that will not actually say replaced until February 15th. And why did we replace it? For price. The thing I like about that is that it is very quickly identifiable. You go in here, take a look at this, and I can see very quickly without having to root. Now let's say this is a customer we've had for a while, and that these log notes run into 500, 600, or something like that. I don't want to do a lot of rooting. What I can do as a management standpoint is go in here, look at this, say, okay, well, this auto canceled. Oh, okay, it was replaced because of price. You know immediately. You don't have to do a lot of looking. Well, why? You know, what happened or something. You're going to know pretty well. So you can tailor your categories or your sub statuses around any of that. If you want to know at a quick glance, you can do that and go right down for that. So that's the first step of recording your rewrite, okay? So this is kind of a two-step process on this. So you've already identified that we're replacing this policy. Now we know we're rewriting this to nationwide. We've got to account for that, right? So what I do is go on this, you're on the same auto tab that you just did, okay? So on the same auto tab on that, you're going to go in, you're going to do an internal, and you're going to duplicate and remarket policy, okay? So it's just going to give you a warning saying, hey, we're going to set this to prospect with no policy number or coverage or premiums, and that's okay. But what this does for you is this is going to actually launch the edit screen where you can now go in and say, we know that this is with going to be with Nationwide, maybe. Uh-oh. Always on a webinar, folks. So all you got to do is a little bit of information up here. Here's what I like. On your new policy, you don't have to remember to put that this is a rewrite. If you duplicate that policy, these are default checked for you. You now have that listed as a rewrite. Fantastic. So really the only additional place that you're going to want to listen to this or list this is if you go down to prospect, the next tab that you'll visit, and I'm sorry, I did that a little quick, so I wanted to point that out to you. You have the typical stuff here, but notice how it sets its prospect. Well, we already know that this is a rewrite, so now you can go in, you can click that blue link, and you can go down here and you can select rewrite. This is actually going to fill in a lot of the information that you would be manually putting in anyway. It's in there for you. If you're one of the ones that use the billing type over here, go ahead and feel free to do that. But now everything's there, you know, your drivers, your vehicles. It's just a really great, easy shortcut that you don't have to go through and do everything, you know, manually. It removes a lot of that manual out of the process. When you finish that up, you get over here to the log. We're going to put on here that we submitted an auto application to Nationwide for the policy. Has it been issued? If you're one of those agencies like we are where you're practiced in attaching the application, go ahead and attach the application over here. Any other things that you might need, you could attach it right to that log. Pick your follow-up date. Remember that category, folks? Go down here, pick new business. I know that when that comes out on me on 129, I see that's a new business. I can quickly look, oh, I know what that is. I just need to go over and check and see if that policy has been issued for Mr. Citizen. It's fantastic. It's great. So it's a really, really easy thing to do if you follow those steps on there. The other thing to notice is that now you've got that auto policy tab for you there. It's Nationwide. It's the rewrite. It's, you know, the rewrite is pending. So you've got everything in place there for you for that, including the source of rewrite, which will become very important. And I wanted to show you exactly why those are important. So, you know, I get the question before, and I've had this question before. Well, I just overwrite the policy. You know, why can't I just overwrite the policy or do anything like that? And we were an agency that was guilty of that. You know, we would do that at one time until we really started understanding how the program was ready to work. And the reason why is because I'm going to show you, and it's just a sample screen here from an agency intelligence report. And on that rewrite, let me just go ahead and pull this up here. So we're looking at our policies added analytic, okay? And as we look at our policies added analytic, notice what we've highlighted here on for you. They're going to tell you the policies that you've added, but it excludes anything that says rewrite. So that policy that we just created for that client, even though you're saying, well, I added a new policy to that, that source, if you'll remember, is rewrite. And because that source is rewrite, that will not show as policy added on the report. So that's where that, you know, that's where that becomes very important to have that and to do that process for it. Now, one little tip that I like to show you guys as we're talking about this process, I did this in the agency because there can be confusion. Well, wait a minute, I rewrite it. Why wouldn't I just do status rewrite, or what do I do? And I'm not really sure what to do with it. This is the recommendation I would make to you guys. So we're rewriting Mr. Citizen's auto and home policy. We know that we're rewriting both of those. We already took care of the auto. To make it easy for your CSRs or for anybody who's working on these, your menu bar up here is customizable. For those agencies that have, used customization, it's great. Do it, use it for whatever you want. And for those that aren't, get familiar with it, call HawkSoft support, ask them about customization or anything else like that. But what I did in here, and it's been a huge boon, it's really helped our CSRs do this, is I just created a group of separators up here, right? And what this is this deals specifically, that group does nothing but deal specifically with the remarket of the policy. So they can, they can quote it out to our comparative rater right from there. They do everything they need to do. Now they've got to that point where they're rewriting the policy, right? So I said, hey, if you're rewriting this policy, I'm going to make it simple for you. I'm going to call it rewrite because you're always calling it rewrite. So if you click rewrite, I have the home policy chose, and then if you do rewrite from there, I've set that up so very quickly, boom, you got it. Price, it's that fast. You're just cooking that quick. If you set that up in your hot button so that does that, they can click that, pick price, pick their date. We won't do the cancellation form on this one, but if you do that, and let's go ahead and use that same verbiage, right? What we'll do 30th cancellation. But it's that quick. Now, what they've done just by doing that, you've recorded that replaced. So that quick, you have got that taken care of. Now, on that same policy tab, you have that there. You know they have to have the other policy for it. So what I did, I just created a duplicate policy hot button. Now they can go up there and they can do that, and there they are. They're doing the process to go right through. They're getting this taken care of now. This is something that if they get familiar enough with it, that the recording of this process, I guarantee you, will not take them, it'll take them less time than if they were doing this manually or trying to go through and type that information in manually on that. Put that in there. We submitted our activity, right? And that's homeowner. That went to nationwide as well. Because it's me, I'm always doing that new business. So there's your process. Just in a very short order of time, we've been able to record these as replaced for price, and we've been able to put these out there as the policies that replace them, and both of them as a source of rewrite. Now, another good question that you might have is like, oh yeah, but those policies canceled. Now that's going to go backwards on my agency intelligence. So here's our policies lost, okay, on agency intelligence. Here's where those statuses are so important. Notice they're saying, hey, here's all the policies you've lost, but we're not going to say a policy that you have labeled as replaced is a lost policy. So that's where that status comes into play. I would encourage those hot buttons. I think that's a great way to do it, and I think it would really help anybody that you have that is in this role that might be doing these on a semi-regular basis, be able to roll through them and make it so that it's not so stressful. Sometimes I hear people, it's like, well, I don't know what to pick after I do phone from insurers. Well, just make it the hot button. That should help them out on that. So that's the rewrites portion of that. As we push on here, I want to go ahead and revisit renewals, because renewals plays into this very well. And as I said in the example in the beginning of the meeting, where I have seen this come into play before is those folks that might say, oh, we don't get those downloaded, just, hey, when it comes in, just put the effective date in there so it doesn't show canceled or anything like that. You may not be doing anything with the premium, or you may not be doing anything with that. However, if you don't do anything with that, that's going to affect those analytics too. I mean, if you never change the premium there, you say just zero out the premium. That will have those same kind of effects. So as we talk about the process of renewals on this, the one thing I would ask you to do, it starts with making that commitment to say, all right, I'm going to have a process where I manually update policy information that's not downloaded into CMS, right? So you're going to have carriers, you're going to have brokerages, you might have some offshoot that you're working with that they don't download policies. They're going to send them to you by way of email. You're going to get a big packet of documents in the mail. This could even be delivered to you by way of e-docs. We even have some carriers here that what we find out is we have to go out and retrieve it. We have to actually run a proactive list, take a look, hey, here's who's renewing in February. Let's go out and check and see if the renewal is out there. So to make the information accurate, this might depend on the size of your agency, but dedicate that one person who will complete the task daily. What this is doing is, the point being that you're recreating a download process, but it's hands-on. So every morning you get a download, make sure that your associate or team member that you have that does this daily updating, have them do that every day, and then have a backup for them do that as well when they're not there. All right. The one thing that a lot of people forget about on these is, yeah, we know the renewals are coming through. We got to take care of those. But those are also any of your endorsements, right? So you might do the endorsement on that. You have to figure that into, say, okay, how do we get this endorsement delivered to us? Are we notified by email, mail, same sorts of situations. And then you got to make sure that those are updated as well, too. So we're going to go ahead and do another example here if we could, and we'll do this as if it was one of those non-downloaded carriers. Mr. Citizen was pretty happy with his dwelling fire policy, so we're going to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do the dwelling fire, keep that where it's at, but we've got the renewal now for the dwelling fire. It's coming up for cancellation, or I'm sorry, renewal in on February 15th as well. So we're going to say that let's say they emailed us a copy of their decks on this. So what you would do on the renewal for this is you go in, you do the action. I do email from company on this. Again, change policy status, because we're going to go in and we're going to tell this that this is actually a renewal. You're going to put your renewal date, which should actually coincide with whatever your effective dates in the policy are now. And if you already know what your renewal premium is, which you should have on the deck, you can go ahead and put that in there. What will happen is you're updating stuff. If you update premiums in there as well, you'll find that that will, on the current rate, will be overridden by whatever you put in the premium fields. So this just launches an edit screen. First thing that you want to do is you want to go down through here and make sure that these line up with the dates that you had put in at the first part of the action here. Okay, status is renewal. Not a whole lot to do on this. There are some carriers out there that I know change policy numbers with renewals. You might want to pay some attention to that if that's what needs to happen on there. So that would be really the only thing I can think of that you need to do on this one here. And the other thing I would recommend is go into the coverage section and then start putting your premium amounts in here. If the coverage A changed, let's say it went to, I don't think the sheet that I have as an example is that, but let's say it went to $26,339. You go down there, let's see, your $1,000 deductible now gets you a $20 credit. So line item through these, go down through and place whatever's on the deck in here. And this will actually add up your premium. Plus, it will give you accurate information in the agency management system in the sense that if you have that dedicated person and you regularly update that information in there, you will not have to start relying on, well, don't pay any attention to the premiums they have in there, or don't look at the coverage because they're a brokerage and they're never right or anything like that. If you do it this way, you can start counting on that a little bit. Plus, for those agencies that might be using a third-party like mobile app vendor, some kind of an agency portal or anything like that that relies on the information in HawkSoft to communicate that to the client, this can become very important because now what you're doing is you're actually putting information in there that goes down through and says, here's what you got for coverage A. Maybe they go to that client portal that you have set up and they want to see what their coverage A is. Well, there it is. And then if you want to have the premium in there, you can do that. That's where this part of this process becomes so important, I believe, when that it gets a little juicier with commercial lines. And for all my my commercial lines comrades out there, I certainly understand that. And that might be one place where you don't want to do line item premium. You might want to find a spot over on the endorsement section and just say, you know, total premium, something like that. But that is something that really, from a workflow standpoint, you'll have to look at that and just see what kind of a time frame is involved in updating commercial line stuff yourself. As far as I know, I'm not sure how intuitive a lot of those third-party things are, like those mobile apps, those client portals that I was telling you about that actually integrate with HawkSoft to communicate that information to the client. I'm not sure how deep of a dive they've done in commercial lines yet, but it's something that if you think it's going to be there someday, by all means, get practiced in it. You know, just I would. But once you enter all the information that you have in there, it could be endorsements, anything that you have to put in there, but you can finish that. And then when you're done with that, it's also going to pre-fill some stuff for you here. So here's the renewal date of what it is. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to say completed manual update of policy information from company deck. And let's say you have the email deck. I'm going to throw this in here. So this is an attachment I just pulled over. We're going to call that the company declarations. Now we call all of our attachments that are a declaration, if you want a description, we match what the company downloads, the title. So like when a company downloads a renewal to us, the download attachment is titled renewal. If they download an endorsement to us, the download attachment is titled change, or something like that. We try to mimic this so that we know that we're going to go in and look at decks. However, I would still go down here and use declarations as a category because that's going to tell you what that is. Right away. For those that may not be using that feature, I just jumped ahead there a little bit, but if you're not using that feature, this actually removes it from wherever you have it saved after it's attached, so you don't have to make that a two-step process. And let's say you need the commercial producer to follow up on this renewal, okay? So all you got to do is assign that for review. If you're not using mail lists in your agency, maybe talk to HawkSoft support or some of your colleagues about it and see if that's something that you might want to get set up. But if you add, like George is going to follow up on this, this will be in his mail list. And now George has to look at the renewal. Oh, yeah, okay, everything looks okay on this. I think this is going to work out okay. I'm good with it. And then he'll mark that as reviewed, and it's done on that. So then when you finish that all up, just waiting for it to attach here, peeps. But this, again, has a very nice look and feel to it. Renewal pending. It's updated with our new premium, right? We adjusted some premium when we was in there. It went from the 329 to the 338. So that is how you would want to do a renewal. The other thing I was going to bring up about that, you guys, I removed it from our toolbar up here, but there is a renewal hot button available by default. So it's one of the questions that you might have, like, well, you know, what do I do with that, set up a hot button? If you just left your default hot buttons up there, you probably have a renewal button, but you can also add it again if you want to tweak exactly what the action process is. So before we get ready for some Q&A and some stuff here, just want to conclude some of the conclusions, takeaways, and some of the things I would encourage you guys to do, because I really do think that it would be super helpful for you in the long run. So you want to do some training in your agency. As I mentioned to you, sometimes you might have to retrain, and that applied to us because we would go in and we would override a policy. So what you want to do is you want to retrain some staff, but do it to properly record when you remarket a policy. Make sure that the policy that you are canceling is indicated as replaced, and that the policy that replaced it is a rewrite on that. The verbiage sounds a little confusing on that, but if you use those workflows, it becomes much easier, and the hot buttons makes it easier yet. And the rewards that you're going to get on agency intelligence is really going to be big. And I say that because when we started doing this process and we started making it a focus, it was always fascinating to me that I could go in and I could look at ABC Carrier. And ABC Carrier, according to HawkSoft, says we have this much premium volume with ABC Carrier. Then I go to ABC Carrier and I look at their reports, and there are so many times that we've been able to get that to within hundreds of $100, $200, $300, which depends on how specific you want to get on that. But for quick answers, quick looks, and everything, it's the proverbial close enough for government work, right? The other thing I'd encourage you to take away from this one is do that manual updating of policy information for non-downloaded policies. Whether it be personal lines, commercial lines, find some way to put information in there. If nothing else, premium. Make sure that you put that premium in there. That you're not only updating the effective date, but in that current rate, you're finding a way to get premium in there. It will come back to you twofold on agency intelligence. The other thing I'll encourage you to do is to get excited about this, right? I mean, be excited about doing this and say, this is going to be great for us. And I would even encourage some people to show agency intelligence to your staff. Say, here's the reason why this is so important. I'm relying on these reports, and this report is coming from this workflow. So get excited about it. Say, hey guys, I found out something really great today on this HawkSoft webinar, and it's going to make life easier. I know everybody won't necessarily always take it that way, but it really will. And from a management standpoint, I think it'll make things easier for agency owners and administrators. Couple of things on this here. I love working and speaking with my colleagues. So here's my information on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. By all means, let's pair up on LinkedIn. Also message me through LinkedIn if there's something that you're like, hey, I didn't want to ask it in the webinar, or I'm just not quite getting it. I'd love to hear from you. Just let me know. And if you like this kind of material that you're seeing here, the other thing I would do is I would encourage you guys, if at all possible, to come to the HUG National that's being held down in Orlando, Florida. It's April 19th, 20th, 21st this year. It's got a great resort down in Orlando, and this is just 2 days packed with this kind of information. Anything from commercial lines to accounting to those reporting to things similar as this. There's just so much information, and I'll be there this year, so I hope if you're on this webinar, you'll come introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you guys. But I'll be there this year. It's my 5th consecutive year. And even though we're coming up on 11 years of using this system, I have to tell you guys, I learn something every single time I go there that makes it worth my trip. So I encourage you to do that. And if it'll sweeten the deal, right as soon as the conference is over, Kelly and I are heading over there to Disney World. So if somebody wants to meet up and do Splash Mountain, I'll ride that thing ad nauseum. I just on and off. So love to have you do that and everything. But by all means, reach out to me. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to turn this back over to you. And
yeah, we have a lot of questions. Yeah, we have a lot of questions, and we have about 15 minutes left before our webinar. The biggest question has been, what about download? We have lots of people kind of saying the same thing, that when they're receiving downloads, it's changing their status or substatus. So if something the cancellation downloads, it changes it to canceled and removes to replaced maybe, and then some people saying on new business, it's, saying something with the status is getting overwritten by downloads. And how do you handle that?
I do understand where they're coming from.
Okay.
So my answer may not be the best of what you want to hear, but what I would say is contact HawkSoft support. That has to do with download configuration. I can tell you that it was a major concern of ours that it's like, well, as soon as this downloads, it's going to download saying canceled. And I can tell you that our replaced has maintained, that it has not changed. But I know it is something in download configuration, and they may have to call support to be able to get that to work exactly. But I can tell you, this is not academic. We've been doing this for a good while yet, and if I were to go in and run a report right now, I could show you where it says replaced and price. So that those are not overriding when those cancellation downloads come in.
We've had several requests from people for you to share some additional information, like a list of your categories for your status and substatus, a list of your suspense categories, and maybe that's something you and I could put together and then share after the fact. What do you think, George?
Sure, yeah.
Maybe put
and,
it out in the
this is
email
kind of a
that
good,
we send.
Yeah, this is a good segue. Just to let you guys know about that, for those of you who haven't used it, so if you go up into the little gear in CMS, you'll be able to do a couple of those things that I've shown you around. So first thing I want to show you is this general configuration. If you go into general config, now you have to have rights to this. So make sure that your admin, if you're not the admin, make sure the admin, the owner, gives you rights, or you walk them through this. But if you go into here and you go down to this action menu, customized toolbar, so here's where you can do all those hot buttons, right? We did the rewrite. So if you did an add or like a new over here for that, this will bring this up. And then you can label what you want the button to look, say. I want to say rewrite. If you want a tooltip, you can. You can do a hotkey, right? So our clients here, our users rather, can go into that and just hit Control X and it launches that for them, right? And then down here is where you would actually identify what you want it to do. So if you click that, you say, I want it to say internal, right? Change policy status. We know that we want it to say replaced. That point, I would stop it from there, okay? Because you never know it's necessarily going to be price. If you stop it here, then that's the screen it will stop at when you hit the hotkey. So again, that's the gear, general configuration, action menu, customized toolbar. The other thing you can do on those lists, a lot of those people are asking about that, and we can definitely share that, but if you go to the same gear and you go down to customized lists, you'll be able to go down here and you've got this, I went sales pipeline, sorry about that. Let me find the cancellation substatuses, there we go. So this is where you can add those. These are things where you can put in the canceled, and here's where you're seeing all the replaced. Now the same thing works for my cancel policies. What if I didn't replace the policy? What if I just went in and I did a cancellation, right? If I just went in and I did a cancellation, I, as an admin, or as a manager of the agency, I still want to know why. Why did they cancel? Do I want to go in and see canceled and dig through a bunch of log notes? Not necessarily. So what do is I require them to go in, and when they label a policy as canceled, was it insurer's request? Are they deceased? Did they move out of our territory? Was it for non-payment? Was it an NSF check? Was it for underwriting reasons? When I see this insurer's request, I better be able to go to attachments and pull up a cancellation, and I better see why. I need to know why, because insurer's request, I need more. We need more. Again, that is all about identifying trends on that. But I wanted to show you guys that real quick, especially since you guys were asking about those sub-statuses lists. But yeah, absolutely. Just know that you have that freedom that oh my gosh, you could go hog wild on that if you wanted to. Like down under that replaced, you see the 4 that we have, but if you really want to get it down to the specifics and the nitty gritty and you're not worried about, a CSR revolt or anything else like that, put 20. This was done very strategically by us because it was major categories, and it was how can we do this that they can quickly identify without having to look through a list of 20 things.
Okay, we had a question from Janice who was saying she just wanted to confirm that that you are creating a new tab for the rewritten policy.
Creating a new tab for the rewritten, that's correct.
Yeah, a new policy altogether. Yeah.
So this the auto that we did here, we duplicated this policy, that created this new tab here.
And Nicole said, how did he just auto-place text in the log notes?
Oh, sorry, Nicole, that was a little cheating. So I had that little bit of text. Are you talking about when I just pasted in, or are you talking about when I used the template, the log template?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Well, here, I'll show you both ways. So to answer your question, Nicole, if it was, let's just do an internal log. The one thing that you were seeing, I just had some notes over here, and then I pasted them in like that.
Oh, she just answered.
Right?
She said log note template. She said she didn't know that that was an option. It was your log note template.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're great. As you're in your log notes here, you can set these up as well, too. There's a couple different things you can do. So you've got this little pencil that'll pull up a list of if you have real common notes that you put into, for example, if you're doing that renewal, right? We were doing the renewal in that, and it's real common. You can either click the pencil here or Control L. And what you might have missed, Nicole, is I'm a big keyboard shortcut guy. I love it, but I did Control L. It brings up the exact same list. And then I just started to type the word manual, and I went down here and manual update of commercial policy, hit my space bar to check it. If you hit OK, there's the text that we have in that log template. If you have ones that you have like a lot of verbiage on, and it's like, oh, this is repetitive, I do this all the time, great. Use those log templates.
Okay, here's another question from Tara. She said, when you duplicate a policy, are you able to change the agent too?
On the duplicate policy, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you'll have the same, if you will, I'm sorry, Jennifer, I was just going to say, if you will, you're going to have all the same opportunity over here to change these things as if you were just doing it brand new. So if it was somebody else or something like that, you could just pull down the list there and do a different agent. Now, the one time that might be an exception is if your admin has closed that down that you cannot change those after a policy has been created. But I think when you create new, it doesn't matter. You're still creating a new policy. You should always be able to change agent 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, and then Andrew asked, what about a policy that we recovered after a period of time lapsed? Does HawkSoft recommend strictly new status and avoid rewrite altogether?
I'm sorry, one more time with that, Jennifer. I'm not sure I understood the question.
Yeah, what about a policy that we recovered after a period of time lapsed? Does HawkSoft recommend strictly new status and avoid rewrite altogether? So
I can tell you how we do it here. Yeah. Ours is kind of, if it's been gone in excess of what the original term of the policy was, that's new. Okay? But if they come back after that to where it's like, and I think I understand the question here, like if it's still within the term and they can reinstate, then you would just manually update the existing policy tab that you had. Now, if it's something where they canceled and they left completely, but they decided the grass wasn't so green over there and they came back 3 months later, I wish it was all that easy, then what I would recommend is to do the new policy tab.
Okay, and then Teresa had a question. She said, if the carrier changes the policy number or uses an extension, with an example of, -01, do you as an agency overwrite the existing tab, or do you create another tab with that policy number for download purposes?
On the renewal, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, if it's on the renewal, we just overwrite the existing policy tab, because all you're doing is you're just doing a transaction on the existing policy. So, you would overwrite that policy number with the new one so that it reflects current on that. The only time I could ever see that being, really complicated is if you have to refer to that old policy number for some reason, and that's going to be buried in the attachments or the log notes of that renewal on that. And if that's the case, I recommend doing the find feature in CMS and putting that old policy number in there.
Okay, and then Janine asked, where would you suggest putting fees and taxes since they aren't part of premium per se, and for running E&O reports, the taxes and fees aren't included. This was on the renewal.
That is a question. Okay. So I told you that I was actually working. I was working with a fellow named John Rivera before he had taken another position here in the Midwest, but he was out in Oregon working on reports. That is a huge topic that we were working with them on because we saw the same issue, right? And it's a great question, but there's just not a good answer to it yet. The one thing that we brought up in one of our focus groups in one of our meetings is you need to be taking taxes and fees out of that premium because these are things that are not going to be considered premium dollar towards our agency. I don't think there's been any advancement made on that at this point. But, oh, geez, you know, to answer your question, I would like to be able to give you an answer on that.
And somebody, Shana said, why are you not putting them in the taxes and fees column?
I think the problem that we found with that was that it was actually adding to the entire premium. I think the taxes and fees were actually going down here and doing current rate, adding into the current rate.
Okay, she doesn't think it does, but
okay.
We're getting conflicted.
Now that's something they might have fixed since I talked to John last time. Good deal.
Yeah. Mary Ann asked, and we only have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to keep going with as many questions as we can up until the hour, and if it cuts off at that point, we will have to just end. If it allows us to continue on, I'll allow George to continue answering questions. Mary Ann asked, we've gotten hung up on what to do with inception date and sold date in relation to rewrite policies versus new. No need to change anything here? That's our question. Even on the newly added rewritten button?
So default, you notice how the inception date of these new ones that I created here, notice that they coincide with the rewrite on that. That is a directive from HawkSoft for policy lifetime, that what you want to do is, even though it seems contrary to us, that it's like, it's the same risk, it's the same exposure. We're basically just changing who is covering this risk and exposure. Why wouldn't I go back to the inception date? You know, that because what they're saying, and I'll even bring this up just one more time here for your review. Look up here how it says new policies added by inception date. So they're not pulling things from an effective date when they're looking at policies added. So that inception date should always be the date of when that policy began with that carrier. It's a little confusing, I know, but that's where that's at. The only thing I would recommend on that is since that's the case, if you are one of the ones that do download commission and you do your commission payroll out of HawkSoft, make sure that when you're reconciling those reports when they came in, if it's a rewritten policy and your agency has the rules similar to ours that, look, you've had that policy in force 2 years, you rewrote it, you don't get new commission again. You know, we pay on new and renewal, 2 different levels. So if you're similar to that, just make sure that if that's the case, that you go in and you say, oh, no, this is a rewrite, change that, physically change that in the commission accounting from the new to the renewal. If you just pay a flat fee, no matter what they write, new and renewal, you're solid. If you just pay new, you're solid. You won't have anything to worry about.
Okay, we had another question. It was from Andres Lasada. He said, hey, George, so when we process downloads, a lot of the carriers end up downloading in their underwriting company, so it ends up not being all the same named carrier. But then I usually go in and do data replace. Is there a way to have these automated to download into a set company and program without the manual input?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's download rules again. Because, okay. And Andres, I think we're talking here. I believe this is where he's talking about. That should not be overwritten by, you know, like if it was, I have nationwide insurance here so we can identify this. When that download comes through, if their sub-company they put it in was Nationwide Property and Casualty of America or something like that, that should not be overwriting that in there. If it is for yours, it is definitely worth that few-minute call to support and say, can you help me with my download rules? This is what's happening, is my company's getting overwritten here. I can only imagine that would make reporting for you a nightmare. So yeah, and I'm sorry I'm not real specific about some of the stuff. It's been so long since I've done the download config.
Sure. Valerie asks, how did you get endorsements to show on a client's policy?
Endorsements to show on a, oh, are you talking about like when I was manually
talking
updating?
About the renewal. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Sure, no problem. So on endorsements, if you use the navigation tree here to the left, if you go into that, you can freeform type anything that you want to in here, if there's a limit for it, if there's a premium associated with it. The other thing you can do is on specific companies is you can go in and preload those so that you have a pull down. So if you have one of those, endorsements that is as long as your arm, and it talks about that, go into the policy company setup, and on the policy company setup, put those endorsements in there. And again, I'll refer you over here to the gear in the policy company setup. So if you have a specific company, let's go into that. Where was I? Burns and Wilcox. Yeah, if you go into there and the lines of business and coverage, I'm in the wrong one. Sorry, guys, I got to go over to home here. There we go. But if you go into your coverages there, you're going to be able to set up all those things as a pull down. It's kind of convenient.
Okay, this is a question from Amanda. It says, when you create a new tab for a rewrite and the new business downloads, do you need to make sure you process and attach it to the new tab?
Oh, that is correct. Definitely.
Okay.
Just like if the cancellation, if I could go a little farther on that, when the cancellation for the prior carrier comes down, you'll attach and process that cancellation on the prior tab, on the old one.
Okay, somebody asked, how do you handle adding a new home policy where the old home sold date doesn't align with the new policy's start date? Do replaced policies show up as added loss in KPIs?
That is actually going to neutralize each other. If you do that, so you've got the old policy, right? And on the old policy, you're going to do that as replaced. So that's not going to show as a policy loss because KPIs exclude replaced. And then on the new one, it would be a rewrite. Even though it's a new home, the exposure's changed. You had a home policy form before. You had it for that. That's where you would use under that rewrite, those sub-statuses. You might want to put something in there, prior client, just as a thought, just as an idea. But then if you put that in there and that goes in there as rewrite, then that will also not show up as policies added. So it's a wash is what's going to happen on that.
Okay, and then
but
Andrew
it provides you that policy history, yeah.
Okay, Andrew just asked if we could send out an email about the national conference. And Andrew, I will make sure that you're on a mailing list. We did just send out one yesterday to all of the HUG members that we had email addresses for. You might want to check your inbox just to see if you did receive it. But I will also just check and make sure we have your email address in our database.
So
there was a lot of discussion
Andrew
about
and I. That's one for Splash Mountain. Good deal.
There's a lot of discussion going on about the taxes and fees. I think somebody just.
And I'm sorry, I just don't have a good
question.
answer for you on that right now. I know that was
yeah.
And I know that's probably, you can see what a hot topic it is, and I just do not have a good answer for you on that right now.
Okay, somebody did ask, how do you add audit premium on commercial policies from prior years?
That is a good question. I think, I would have to tag in with the person who does our commercial updating to see how that goes, because I'm trying to recall if we've ever talked about that. Sorry about that. I don't have the answer for you on that.
That's okay, and I think that kind of gets most of the questions that I was able. It says somebody's.
If there's something that somebody definitely
Well,
wants
then,
answered at this one, just go ahead and do the raise hand. Pop the hand up there. We'll take a look.
And Kimberly just responded, said, client sells home and we write the insured's new home. Then the new home would be considered a rewrite and the home sold as replaced. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct. That's spot on.
Okay. And
Looks like we had a few hands go up. I don't know if you can see that on your side, Jennifer.
Yes, I did. I did see that.
Okay.
Was that questions? I'm sorry. I'm trying to read questions at the same time. On the quote export tab, is there a special setup that you use to get the item showing up well in your PL Rater that works well?
For us,
quote export button.
It's just the bridge that we set up with our rater is Easy Links, and they do an extraordinary job with mapping the data from HawkSoft over into Easy Links. My opinion of that would be that it's going to depend on your comparative rater.
Okay. Somebody asked, just touching on the download work, for example, if we relabel policy as rewrite, will a download overwrite that? We did address that, and those are your settings within your download, and if it's overwriting it, it's something you would need to address with HawkSoft to have those settings changed, correct?
I mean, it's one of those things where I'm in the general settings on that. Didn't want to go into that. This download configuration, you just wouldn't believe all of the stuff that it could do, and it's one of those things that I would just recommend a talk with support, and you tell them these are the things I want to accomplish, or that I do not want to happen. I don't want my status to be overwritten when it comes in. I want it to stay whatever I put it, because I'm pretty sure that's a setting. I mean, if you guys want, I can take a look real quick here. I've not. Let's see here.
And can I ask you, were you saying that the people who raised their hands had questions? Is that what we needed to do, is answer their questions?
Yeah, because I had put that out there. I said if it's
I can do that. I'll let you do this, and then I have 4 people who have their hands raised, or 5, and I will allow them to talk individually, and I'll call your name when we're ready for you to talk. Okay. So Rodney Cook, I'm going to press the button, and you are unmuted, and you can ask your question. Hello, Rodney?
You're on the air with Jennifer.
Looks like it's still muted. It's telling me I'm trying to unmute it, but it doesn't seem to. I'm going to try Tyler Horton and see.
Can you hear me now?
Rodney,
we got you,
I can.
Rodney.
Yeah, there we go, Rodney.
Something popped up, and you have to press an unmute button on my side.
Okay, thank you for telling me that.
Mine's not a question, but it was an answer to the question about all the multiple carriers. It's in your policy carrier setup. If you set up, like Progressive has 600 different carriers. If you put all of the different subcarriers on the Progressive one that you want to use, they'll all float into one Progressive. So it's in policy.
Is that what you're talking about, Rodney?
In policy company setup. There's a place to put sub-companies.
I think you're talking about over here, right, in programs?
Yeah, I think so. Let me look in mine real quick.
Yep.
Yep, I think so too.
But, or is it?
I still stand by that's a download thing. I do think there's something involved with that too.
No,
but that is a great tip.
It is just right there, because I'm doing it right now with an acquisition that I just did, and I've got tons of them that I'm doing to set up like that.
All right, great. Thank you, Rodney. I'm going to put you back on mute, and
Thanks,
I'm going to allow Tyler Horton to speak. One moment, please. Okay, Tyler, you should be getting an option to be unmuted and to answer a question. Tyler, are you able to unmute your phone and ask a question? Okay, I'm going to now go to Katie Stevens. And Katie, I'm going to ask you to unmute your phone.
Okay. Okay, when you move or renew a manual policy, do you not create a history?
Oh, like for policy history, I would recommend
Yeah.
policy history.
Okay. And then we had an answer out of the audit, that question that came up. You have to create a new tab and use the old dates and premium.
Whatever the audit's for. That seems.
That's what we've learned.
So that would be
you
a
have to
completely
set up
different tab?
Yes,
With the old dates.
with the old dates.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's aggressive.
A lot. Yes. Our commercial agent loves it. Not.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katie. I'm going to put you back on mute, and we're going to go to Tara, if she's available. Tara, we're going to ask you to unmute your phone if you want to ask your question.
George, I was just wondering when you were making the rewrite tab, when you were showing us how you did that as a hotkey, I didn't catch what you put in as a tooltip or the help text.
Oh, sure. The actual setup of it?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just go over to the one that I created for that rewrite key. So, I did button titles or rewrite, and I said, use this tool to begin the recording of a rewritten policy. Hotkey, whatever you have available. If you click down here, it will tell you everything that you have available.
Okay.
What has not already been put into a hotkey reservation.
Okay, that's all I needed.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the
I'm going to
question.
now put you back on mute, and I'm going to ask Marcia Roy if she would like to speak. Marcia, if you want to unmute yourself.
For a different policy, a lot cheaper.
Life insurance?
Yeah. And see, for some reason, and I told him, he said you can call Beth first, and you see her numbers at the bottom.
Is this?
He said, he already changed mine, but he wants the,
Marcia, are you available to answer or to ask a question?
For some reason, why do I think she is Lincoln Financial?
I'll check.
Because I'm not sure about that one.
They may have to sign or cancel
Oh, they're gonna have to.
or call them direct.
Okay, I am going to see
Yeah.
if Randy had a question, I believe. We're going to see if Randy is available to
Yeah, and
answer a
Jennifer,
question.
hey, Jennifer,
Randy?
go ahead
Yeah.
and unmute him. I kind of have a hard stop at 2:15, so if we can, I'll make
Okay.
this the last one.
Okay, that sounds good.
Let me put my
Randy, are
contact
you
information
available?
up here, though.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, I hope.
Yeah.
Can
Is
you
this
hear me?
Randy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Hey,
can
I
hear
just
you.
popped the question up on chat also. We're having an issue with staff being due diligent in putting in sub-statuses in the prospect. As HawkSoft allows one to kind of blow past that entry. In other words, just prospect might show up, but not the sub-status of the prospect that we're after. Do you know where we can force that
So
sub-status?
yes, you can deposit it. I haven't posted it.
So if you go up into, again, where you do your setups
Yeah.
and you customize your lists there,
Pretty sure.
Yes.
and you would ask specifically about the prospect where you talk about the cancellation one.
That scared me. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
we should check.
I've been in the area that you're looking at, and I couldn't get it to stick.
Okay. So you should have the ability, when they set the policy status manually, if you check this box, it'll honk at them, and they've got to do a substatus.
Correct, but I noticed that even though we have that set, when you do like a remarket, or even if you put in a new one, you can actually still blow past that. In other words, you're doing the entries and you're tabbing through. It'll let you still go past.
Oh, now that might be a bug. I would have to look, Randy, or ask some of the dev team about that.
Okay.
Because it was my understanding that if this is checked, you have to, it will not let you proceed.
Right, and I noticed on some of your demonstrations in the prospect, there are not the substatuses in there.
Right.
In the prospect area. And that was after you had done a remarket, you could actually tab through and it'll let you go past. So I'm looking at a way of forcing that to put in the substatus on that prospect.
Yeah, I would be interested about yours, Randy, because for instance, just to kind of give you an example again, wrong place. If I go down to that customized list, to give you the example, if you look at the cancellation substatuses, you notice that if our CSRs go in and they put a status of cancel in there, it says, you got to put a substatus in, right? And we've got that in there. So if I go in and I go to cancel this policy, phone from insured, and I change the policy status, and I go down and I say it's canceled, you see, I can't finish this. I can't do anything else until I put that substatus in there. Am I understanding your question right?
Well, I know that it works in that area, but if you put in a copy rewrite or remarket, it'll still let you blow past that on the entries. It won't force it.
Yeah, on the remarket, I think you'd have to do that in a different area. So you're talking about on the replaced, right?
Correct. Not on an existing policy, on a remarketed one.
Yeah. Just make sure that in your replaced heading under your cancellation substatuses that is marked.
Okay, and that should do the same for the remarket. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
I think I know where my issue was. Greatly appreciate the help. Great seminar.
Yeah, glad to hear from you. Good to hear from you, buddy. Thank you.
All right.
And with
Jennifer, that kind of brings me to the end of my time, my friend. Yep. I could talk all day about it, but
I know. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We will get out a link. We will email you all a link to the recorded webinar, along with maybe the PowerPoint as well, and some other information if we can get that together. And George, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and answering all the questions that came up.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, my best to everybody.
All right, thank you.